Get in Gagan because he was in that bullish camp, and he's the one who's been looking at that Elara report and of course the research that goes in it. Gagan, good morning. Great to have you on the show. So very complex. I must admit that Sonal is our in-house expert. We really tried to make sense. So the broad understanding that we got is, A, you're saying that we probably are close to a 4-year bottom in chemicals as a whole. And some of these companies, particularly I think the ones that are in fluorochemistry, Gujarat Fluoro, Navin Fluorine, and maybe even Vinati, these might lead the recovery cycle. Explain to us that thesis and why you think it'll be these stocks.
Yeah, so we analyzed the 180 global chemical companies past 16-year data and find that typically the cycle runs typically 3 to 4 years. So bottom comes on the long-term valuation implied in these 180 chemical companies every 4 years. So we have seen the bottom in 2008, then 12, then 16, and then finally 19. So this is the 4th year. That's the one thing. Second point is that currently long-term valuations of global chemical companies is around 4.6 or something 4.8%. That's the range. And that is already at around 12-year low. So that's the macro data that is indicating it. That's the one thing. Second thing is that typically global chemical cycle moves at least 1 year before the cycle of the global GDP. If you see the past 30 years data, so that's also global GDP moves like 4 years time period. So if you check the IMF data, so that's also indicate that something like 2024 should be the bottom. So there is it's historically, that's an indication that somewhere second half of FY24 should be the bottom of the global chemical cycle. This is the macro analysis. Now at micro level, we have analyzed around 52 global chemical companies, their commentary in past few months. And there is a common consensus emerging is that they expect that inventory destocking that's primarily driven because of the China side, that would be over. They expect that by December, and they see already some signs of recovery, although it's a pocket of some segments. And weak recovery is expected in the March quarter. That's a general commentary consensus that is giving, and that is again validating what's the macro cycle that's a moving, and that's a micro level also. I mean the global commentary also coming in line with it. So so that's our overall thesis is that it's a top-down approach.
Got it. So we understood the top-down, that in general, this destocking and this excessive inventory in the market, that should start correcting by December. Now let's start getting to the micros, because it's so complex, right? So many different segments, depending on which refrigerants and chemicals and dyes and then agrochemicals, so on and so forth. So we're starting off with the fluorochemistry question. Why do you feel companies like Gujarat Fluoro and Navin Fluorine are perhaps best placed? What's happening with inventory levels and demand here?
Yeah, so that's because what I find is that their products and subsequently what's the segment they are catering, they are the expected to be the best to recover actually. I find the users industry of the Navin and Gujarat Fluoro. So for example, Navin is present in this HFO segment that is expected to be grow very fast. At the same time, there is also the oil and gas industry that's related chemicals. They are also doing very fine actually. So similarly, if you talk about the Gujarat Fluoro, so Gujarat Fluoro, this PVDF and PTFE, these are the flagship products. That's fine. Lots of applications, primarily used in the industrial applications, home appliances. So the commentary is very good globally for these sub-segments of the chemical sector. So that's why this overall, I came to the conclusion that because their user industry will be the leader in terms of recovery in the chemical sector. And that's why this Navin, this Gujarat Fluoro, also the Vinti because of this AT-based demand is expected to recover first actually. So that's the overall, that's my logic is that they would be the recovery leader. These stocks.
Gagan, morning. Reema here. Want to go back to that point about valuations. You're saying that global chemical companies, the industry moves in a 4-year cycle, right? The 4th year is the bottom. The last bottom took place in 2019, and therefore in 2023, we are due to make a bottom. This is applicable for both growth and valuations, right? Growth also bottoms out and value. Can you talk about, give us the valuation numbers? What was the peak? What are the valuations right now? What are they corrected from? And when they start rising, based on your analysis for the last so many years, what would the valuations go up to?
Yeah, so if you talk about the 180 companies universe globally, so their valuation touches the peak of like 8% in 2021. And before that, the bottom of the valuation or trough, you say that was came at in 2000, 2 years before in 2019, that was the 5%. So 5% to 8% that the valuation moves in the up cycle from the 2019 to 21. And now again, the valuation has reached almost like 4.7% currently. And that 4.7% valuation were the bottom almost like last time I have seen these in the 2012 actually. These are long-term valuations that, I mean, growth implied in the global chemical sector. So
Okay.
you can say it's almost like from the peak, it's like 40% correction in the valuations.
Okay, got it. So we've seen a 40% correction from the peak, and when the upcycle picks up, we will start, valuations should go back to what they were. So,
Yes,
okay,
yes.
All right, so we got your view on Vinati, Naveen Fluorine, and the other one is Gujarat Fluoro, where you like these three companies because the end-use segments that they cater to, whether it's EVs or whether it's these, refrigerants in these consumer companies, those segments are seeing some fast growth, and for Vinati, it's the ATBS demand. What about the agrochemicals, the pharma space? Are we seeing signs of bottoming out there? If not now, when do you think that will take place? What's the demand supply looking like?
Yeah, so basically, I have analyzed around 24 different subsectors. I mean, it's a range of like personal care sector at the bottom. Still, the outlook is very weak. I mean, globally, it's like 10% decline they expect over the next 2 quarters. While the best is the medical equipment, industrial applications like 15%. Now, agro and pharma, they come somewhere in between. I mean, they are the non-discretionary sectors, so their demand would remain. I mean, they don't go so much negative. So pharma, that's comes something at the top end of the middle, like you can say the weak recovery expected by the end of the year, around 3%. That's a global expectation, is that these companies can manage globally. The companies can improve their revenue, whatever their exposure in the pharma sector, by around 3%. By agrochemical, the commentary is relatively flat. The expectation is that there is agrochemical impacted actually most as compared to the pharma because of some issues in the Latin America, some delayed monsoon effect. So that's why the general expectation is that that sector would recover slightly later than the pharma. That was the general commentary, is that, or you can say it's might be they end up with some at max the flat revenue globally. That's on the YY basis. So
Gagan,
you can say the order that this pharma will come first, then agrochem will come
first
later.
pharma and
Although
then agrochem.
their view is not so much negative, while other subsectors or sectors of the chemical side.
Got it. Thank you very much for joining in, Gagan, with your thoughts and explaining the report in which you've analyzed 180 companies. We'll slip into a very short break. On the other side,